first main mistake that happens with the hip hinge is that they are focusing on leaning forward more than using their hips to bring them down. And when that happens, their back rounds up, their glutes and hamstrings don't get activated, and all of the tension is on their lower back. So doing this for 3 sets of 10 multiple times a week is just going to strain your lower back over and over and over again and reinforce low back pain that this exercise should be helping minimize when done properly. Another thing that happens pretty often is that people are squatting while hip hinging, and they really focus on their knees to make their way down, as opposed to, again, using their hips to bring themselves down and get to that lowest point. And the last main mistake, and this one is a little more subtle and not as many people recognize it as a mistake, is they could be performing the hip hinge properly, but they have their neck extended at the end of the movement. And that throws off their spinal positioning and create excess tension on their lumbar spine, which is their lower back, and really tense up their lower back once again. So when we look at a hip hinge, whether it is an RDL, a Romanian deadlift, or a stiff leg deadlift, you wanna focus on driving your hips backwards. So it's not just about leaning forward as low as you can, it's about bringing your hips backwards and getting a good stretch along the way. Now, when you do that, your torso is going to lean forward as a natural consequence of that. So as it leans forward, you want to keep a straight, neutral spine. So that means from your head to your hips is going to be a straight line, and it's just going to lever forward until you reach your max hinge point, which is going to be a little bit different for everybody. But the main thing to kind of imagine here is that when you are hip hinging, when you're doing a Romanian deadlift or a stiff leg deadlift, it's always helpful to think about having a wall behind you, or actually putting a wall or object behind you that you can reach backwards toward and hit your butt against. That's a really helpful cue to help reinforce the idea that, hey, I'm actually moving my hips backwards, I'm using my hips to move this, my hamstrings are stretching out, my glutes are stretching out, and I'm doing this movement properly.